Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Hello.
Yeah, so today I'm aware that all of us here are parents, and we'll be chatting about a topic that is probably very close to our hearts, and that is about the mental health of our youth and our children. So, Dr. Lim, you see many young children and kids at the Department of Developmental Psychiatry. To begin with, could you tell us what are some of the more common mental health conditions that you see in our youth?
Yeah. So the commonest condition that we see is probably ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So in this condition, we're talking about young children who have a lot of energy. They're hyperactive, they're impulsive, they may be inattentive, and this causes them problems in terms of everyday interactions with people as well as their learning. We also see other developmental condition, particularly autism spectrum disorder or ASD. And in ASD, these young persons often have problems with social communication and social interaction. Therefore, this can affect their peer relationship development. There are other conditions that we see commonly, including anxiety disorder and depression.
So there's so many mental health conditions out there, and for parents, it's just overwhelming sometimes because of the amount of information out there on the internet. So what are some of the signs and symptoms that parents should look out for that will give them an indication that they need to seek further help?
If your child's behavioral issues seem persistent, or conversely, if there is a change in your child's behavior, that means your child is behaving differently from usual, right? So one of the things, of course, is that you can communicate with your child's teachers to see if they have observed any difference in your child's behaviors, or if your child's behavior is also problematic in the school setting. So I think in schools today, every semester, there is a parents meet the teacher session, isn't it? So this is a chance, I think, to get some feedback from the teachers. Or, of course, teachers are usually readily contactable, for example, through Class Dojo and apps like that, right? And, teachers can actually refer students to the school counselor for an assessment to see if the student may have a mental health condition. And if this is suspected, the counselor can actually refer to a school-based mental health service called REACH, where the assessment is actually done in a school setting. And it is free of charge.
Yeah, Dr. Lim, thanks for sharing. And I'm just wondering, I mean, despite all these apps and communication devices, right? So it appears that the children and even the parents are very well supported. But then are there any situations or examples or specific areas or times when youth are more stressed than usual, where you can expect more mental health issues to actually surface in their lives?
So, of course, one common stressful factor for many youth today will be studies, isn't it? Yeah, particularly during exams times and especially during the high stakes exam. I think it's not just the young persons who are stressed. Parents are probably very stressed too, isn't it? So the other scenario actually would be in terms of our peer interactions. So sometimes, friendship problems, bullying, and then maybe for the older young persons, romantic relationships. Another stressful factor might be in the home setting. So particularly, say, when parents are having conflicts or even, talking about divorce or in the process of divorce.
So I think that's a very important point that you brought up, because how often do we as parents, I mean, you mentioned a lot of stresses coming from the family, parents divorce, parents being too fixated on a child's grades, but how often do we then examine the role that we play on our own children's lives? I mean, at times I do question whether, I'm being a helicopter parent at times. I'm not sure whether some of you have had that feeling as well. So maybe, Jay, you'd like to share on your own parenting journey?
Yeah, I think my boys are in primary 3 and it's just started the whole exams. And so I think I've just found myself at a different level of parenting at this point. I'm not sure if it's just coming from, like you mentioned, a helicopter parenting kind of thing, where I'm sort of making sure that they're on top of things. And, it gets quite stressful, especially during the exam times. So I do wonder, and I did get quite fierce in the last semester. I did get quite fierce because I think it came from a place where I was afraid that if I didn't get them into a habit of a certain way of things, then they might fall into the opposite way of things. So in that sense, I became quite strict with them, but I'm not sure whether there would be any long-term impact on them about this. At the same time, when it's not exams, it's quite different. But I have started trying to get them to be a bit more disciplined with their time and time management. But, sometimes when, I don't know if it's a gender thing as well, if boys are different to girls or you know, what to expect. So I find that boys kind of slack off a little bit more. I'm not sure. I could be completely wrong on this, right? So I'm finding myself that I need to chase them up a little bit more, and I'm not sure if that's doing them harm.
Nah, I mean, I think that primary 3 sounds like a transition year, isn't it? Because it's not just exams coming on, and there's also a new subject called science, isn't it? I'm not sure, but I think that now there will be no mid-year exams for them.
There are weighted assessments.
They're called weighted assessments with a kind of a lower weightage.
Correct.
So I think that the Ministry of Education has indeed actively tried to reduce stress over the years. And I think taking out a higher stakes mid-year exams was one of the kind of like strategies. But I hear you that being strict, that was your concern. I think there's a difference about being strict and being harsh. So one of the things is that sometimes in parenting, you need to kind of like be firm, isn't it? Because then you help your child to establish some habits that you think will be healthy for them. You help them to establish routines. You help them to kind of like know what your expectations are. But I think it's important that while doing this, you know, to be mindful about their emotions. And also if in the process you met out any disciplinary measures, not to be harsh. Because ultimately we want to guide them. We are not there to cause them physical or emotional hurt.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Sounds like it's quite tough to be parents nowadays. You need to be quite dynamic, adjusting to the situation, and I mean,
but there are fun times too, right? Because definitely have some playtime, you know, make things lighthearted, do things you enjoy as a family.
So what happens when parents then, I mean, sort of become overbearing or over controlling on their kids? What happens in this dynamic?
Because I think that a lot of times when parents over control, as you described, right, it is because of their anxiety, their worries. So I think the first thing is to be mindful. And parenting is not a single person's responsibility. I think for most families, when there are two parents. So I think it's about also discussion between the couple about expectations. And then perhaps watching out for one another. I know that a lot of times as a couple, we don't want to contradict ourselves in front of the children. But I think that you can actually probably give advice to your better half if you think that, hey, maybe you might be a little too, like you say, overbearing. I think a lot of times along your parenting journey, you have any kind of questions, right? Who can you ask? Who can you consult? I think it's to work with people around you or professionals. Talk to the teachers to kind of understand about the child's learning. Check in perhaps with your own fellow parents like this, right? Have a casual chat, find out what other parents do. And there are also support available even within the community. Family Service Center, they even offer online parenting courses, for example, if there's a need.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm not sure how do we get our children to open up. So one of the ways I like to try is to be the fun parent, right?
Yes.
Not the disciplinarian. But I'm not sure whether that's a good way to get...
Your fathers are always the parents, whom children go to for fun and mothers for the emotional support.
My kids always look to me for that sort of thing.
The stable sort of figure.
But I think I do have a fear that, eventually they might start sort of, I wouldn't say shutting down, but trying to keep more to themselves, maybe because they don't want to burden us or along those lines. So that's one of those things that I'm concerned about with my kids.
So kind of like maintaining conversations or, regular family activities where everyone participates, shares and enjoys, that's important. Of course, sometimes there are incidents that get us thinking. I recall when my child was in primary 2, one day the teacher called up and said, in school today, somebody hits your kid. So I said, okay, then I checked in with my kid during dinner and said, something happened in school? Nope. Oh, your teacher called and said somebody hit you? Nope. So my kid said no. Okay, so what am I supposed to do? Right? I'm not supposed to interrogate or something, right? So I just left it. But the following day, I kind of asked my kid about it again. Then my kid said, because at that time she was the monitor and she had to take down the name of a kid who was talking in class. Then the kid took the book and hit my kid on the head. Then my kid, when I asked, then why didn't you tell me about it yesterday? Then my kid said, I was worried that you'll get angry. It got me to reflect actually that a lot of times, I probably do react, although I may not have a mirror to see myself. And I think to a young child, maybe my angry self can be scary. So it got me actually to reflect a lot on myself and maybe, how I control my anger.
And in that instance, right, like, for example, your child says to you, I don't want to say it because I'm afraid you're going to get angry. What should a parent do? I mean, like myself, what is some of the steps that we could take to, I mean, obviously self-reflection is one. How do we then overcome that situation with the child?
So for me personally, develop a way to get myself to cool down quickly. So in fact, of course, I still get angry, right? But I think, I hope so, over the years, I become more mindful of my own reaction. And one strategy I've tried, of course, is that when I really find it difficult and angry words are going to come out, right? I just step into the kitchen to take a cold drink. And then I decide what I want to say, because I told myself that I want to guide my child. I don't want to hurt my child. So it's a, mantra or something that kind of just has been guiding me over the years.
Interesting, because you mentioned that situation about your child not wanting you to become angry. And I think that's it's very natural, right? A reaction to want to protect your kid.
Yes.
But the kid also doesn't want to overburden us with whatever is
We want
happened.
to know, right? Because we're so worried. But the kid won't open up. And then we're like, hey, come on, what can I do to squeeze that out of my child?
And my take-home message is really the cold drink is important in the kitchen. So, there are many times we probably face with similar problems.
Yeah.
It's about how we then, douse ourselves out and not react in that way. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, most welcome. I'm sure that along your parenting journey, you will also have things that you learn about yourself. So I think I see this as a kind of like a rewarding journey. It's not just about us guiding the child. I think, in fact, I learned a lot about myself through this journey and from my children.
I agree. I'm learning a lot about myself as well. Really am. Yeah.
I guess we can move on to the next segment, Jay, as well. This segment is really about understanding neurodevelopmental conditions like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorder. And the problem now is that social media is inundated with all sorts of information about ADHD, about autism spectrum disorders. And sometimes parents like ourselves may misread the signs and symptoms and question whether their children have ADHD, autism. I'm not sure what you all feel about what's out there in the media nowadays and whether it's all appropriately portrayed.
Yeah, I've actually addressed this with my husband as well. So we've got 3 boys.
Yep.
And one of my kids, all 3 of them to a certain extent, but one of them sometimes seems to not pay as much attention to us. So for example, when he's watching TV, we call him and then he might not. And then it'll take him a while to respond.
Yep.
So once again, I'm not sure if it's an age-driven thing or if it's actually a condition. And there's so much information on social media, and I think a lot of us tend to Dr. Google it, right? And we try to self-diagnose it.
Yeah, you complete some checklists and
and we usually try to go on to the more worst scenario.
Yeah.
So we just see a small thing and then we diagnose what it is. So I find that to be an issue, but
I've had a lot of anxious moments as well with my kids growing up, isn't it? Worrying about their health, their growth, their development. So indeed, one of the problems with these conditions is that it is not just a checklist, right? Because frankly, if you look at the checklist for ADHD, which of us don't kind of endorse any of the symptoms sometimes, right? And the question that whether I still have problems with my attention now. So it is not just about the symptoms and the checklist, but also that these conditions are present young and they are persistent. So that's why it is important, like you said, right? Watching them, hey, do these symptoms kind of stay there and cause the child problems still over time? Checking with the teachers, right? Are these symptoms also present in a school setting? And then, as I've said earlier, teachers have a lot of experience actually because they deal with so many students over their kind of like career. And in schools, there's actually support. There's school counselors who can actually screen and refer for assessment. And schools also provide intervention. So in fact, schools have a special education needs officer we call SENO, right? Who is trained to support students with not just ADHD, but autism spectrum disorder as well.
So thanks, Dr. Lim, for giving the parents out there some tips on who to reach out for in terms of support for their children's mental health. We've now come to the Experts React segment of our episode where we look at real stories and posts of Singaporeans online. So let's go. So this is our first Redditor's comment. What Singaporean Redditors say about youth mental health? I worked as a full-time tutor for 5 years. One of the saddest things was when I tutored a primary 3 kid who was usually very bright and confident, good at the subject. But there was one time she called herself stupid when she got a question wrong. She's 9. She wouldn't call herself that if she hadn't heard someone calling her that whenever she got a question wrong. I wonder what the cost is for forcing your kid into a success mold they can't fit into. Wow.
How do you feel being a fellow parents yourself?
I do agree with it in a way, in the sense that the child wouldn't know to call themselves that unless you've called or you've made mention of it, you know. So, for example, sometimes, you know, my kid does something really silly. I'd say, you know, don't be silly, or, you know, can you not be so silly? And then, you know, he might say that about himself later on. So I've tried to really curb what I've said about them, because I don't want, I've started focusing on the act that they're doing rather than them as a person. So rather than saying, don't be so silly, I'm saying, you know, can you not do that silly?
Right.
That
use the word that they use.
Yeah, or don't focus on the act rather than attacking them personally.
Okay.
That's what I've started doing. So I'm trying to make a very considered effort to not affect their own personal self-esteem. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you see, one of the things I learned from young persons is don't be too quick to judge. You know, young people today, you know, keep telling me that they feel very judged, right? So let's not be too quick to judge, okay? Because one of the things is that sometimes, you know, reading this, right, I don't know whether there's some insinuation, whether, like, for example, has it been a parent who's been using such words? Maybe, yeah. Or, you know, could it be another important adult, whether it's the teacher? But it might be friends too, right? So of course, it's possible that this young person could have heard these words a lot. But also I've seen some really well-behaved children who became very affected by one comment from a person that this young person thinks is very important. It could be, you know, the favorite teacher using this term, or some students who have very high expectations of themselves, but they get good comments from teachers, adults. But then the one time when they were criticized, they took it to heart. Yeah. So, you know, let's not be too quick to judge. But I think rather let's look at, okay, this is an opportunity for us to kind of think about it, like you said. And then kind of see, hey, maybe how can I help if this is my child, right? To kind of like not be too hard on herself, to kind of like see this possibly as a way of learning. Because in medical school, right, we always taught that it's okay to make mistakes as a student, but not as a doctor.
I mean, I'm not an expert on youth mental health, but I thought I'd just chime in and say that this, to me, is a sort of a stark reflection of, in a way, how critical we are nowadays, right? In a sense of ourselves and perhaps even of others, to sort of strive to a certain level of perfection so as to meet certain standards. To be honest, I always tell my wife sometimes, like, even 60% is okay as long as the kid tried his or her best, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's different people are differently abled in a sense, and if 60 is the best, as long as you try your best, then that's all right.
Yeah.
And then we should probably start by being more forgiving to ourselves so that we can, in a way, be forgiving to others.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I think that's a really good kind of like advice, right? Because indeed we often have expectations of our children, right? You know, because parents may bring the child to say, my child needs to learn anger management. My child needs to learn how to manage stress and this and that, right? But then very often in my conversations with parents, I often say, you know, look, if we expect this young person to control anger, to manage stress effectively, then we as adults should be able to do this, and to be able to do this better, right? So I mean, it's also with this that anytime I have an expectation of my child, I actually ask myself, what about me, myself? Yeah. Because, I think as parents, we should strive to be a role model for our child. It's okay to make mistakes. Yeah. If you think you want your child to control, manage anger, then let's also manage it ourselves too.
Parents need to stop telling the kids they're special princes and princesses, or that they are destined for great things. Also, fancy weekend outings, games, and shopping should not be the only time parents and kids interact. Every single day, a kid should be able to approach his or her parents. Drop that freaking phone and listen to the kid when they approach you. Wow. Yep.
Does it resonate with you as parents?
I'll let Jay take this.
I don't know, but maybe I chime in first because there's so much out there. But it was the last sentence that caught me because this brought me back to the time when I was actually, at the playground with my kids. So they were playing, right?
Yep.
And then naturally, my hand just reached out into my pocket, took out the phone, and was checking emails, doing things. And after a while, I suddenly thought to myself, hey, what's the reason I'm here at the playground? Am I just a minder or something? And that's when I put my phone back in the pocket and just went and played with my kid.
Actually, it's a similar thing with us as well. We try to, I have moments with my kids where I make sure the phone's away.
Yeah.
Give them a hug, lie down with them, have a chat with them. Just, whatever, even if it's silly things, they want to talk about something. But I have to admit, sometimes it's hard because when you're caught up with the rat race, your phone's with you, your kid approaches you to talk to you about something and you're on your phone and you're doing something and they say, no, just give me a while, just, wait, I'm doing something.
Yeah.
It gets tough. So I think like what you mentioned before, it's about being mindful, right? About your actions.
Yes.
And making sure that, we make the necessary steps and take the necessary steps to spend the time with them. And absolutely right. I agree with this. It shouldn't just be only when you go out or, that you interact with your kids. It should be every single day. It's our responsibility as parents. That's the way I feel. That we should,
I think there are moments when we are so-called, absorbed into work and all that. We neglect people around us, right? And kids, as you mentioned, model our behavior. So they will see that us using our phones. Why are parents telling us not to use our phones when they are using it themselves? So then it's very hard to sort of explain ourselves in that sense.
And then, this brings back to our earlier chats about young persons not opening up or sharing with us, right? Hey, if when they approach you and you don't kind of pay attention to them, it will come back later on, right? And I think also that sometimes we give ourselves excuses. Oh, there's an urgent email I need to check. And then likewise, young persons will tell me, my dad, my mom's always, complaining about me using phone too much. But when I'm doing work, they don't see me. And then the moment I finish my work, I take out my phone, tada, somehow they appear. And then they start accusing me.
I do want to mention the first line though. Parents need to stop telling their kids they're special princes and princesses or that they're destined for great things. Why would that be wrong or why would it not be wrong? I think as parents, we try to encourage our kids to say, you can do anything you put your mind to. I guess there is a certain extent where you don't want to bubble wrap them and say that they are completely special and nobody else like them. So that line actually also has caught my attention. I don't see why parents, I would not stop telling my kids that, they can do anything they put their mind to.
I wonder where that comment, what was in the mind of the Redditor when he or she made the comment. Because I also agree that, we should try to be encouraging in a way, but not overemphasize, unrealistic things. But all this comes from a place of love when we tell our children that, right?
I suppose reading this, I think it's possible, again, the concern might be, if I read this, destined for great things. Is it placing an expectation on the child already? And then special princes and princesses, whether the concern might be, will this make the child feel like they are entitled? So I suppose, a lot of times, we sometimes say things to our children with some intention, but again, you can see perceptions can differ.
Currently, I'm having contamination OCD and it disrupts my everyday life. My father and mother don't really give a damn about it, except warn me that they will send me to IMH when they're upset with my rituals. I haven't even been there yet. I noticed it. Today we didn't really cover OCD. But perhaps for this scenario, how do we help?
I think it seems this person's frustration is that parents are using IMH as a threat, right? Come on, IMH is not that scary, okay? But I suppose in this particular case, everyone in the family is probably frustrated. OCD can be a very disabling condition. So even though OCD may not be as common as the other conditions we mentioned earlier, but certainly I think local mental health studies in the adults have shown that OCD seems to be more common in Singapore compared to other countries. If this person is still in school, perhaps this person can also approach the school counselor. That could be step one to getting help. Because for OCD, there's actually effective psychological therapy. In fact, for young persons, for many conditions, we don't really go to medication at the very start. Yeah, unless, of course, it is a very serious condition. Most times, there are lots of effective non-medication therapies available.
Yep, so seek help early.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
In case you're wondering why my mom still brings me to see the doctors, is because she thinks I have an attitude issue and not mental illness. She hopes the psychiatrist and psychologist can fix my attitude. I'm 18. Yep.
Well, it depends also because at least in our institution, most times if there is no mental health condition, we may actually suggest also other places to get help. Let's say our family therapists may be able to mediate conflicts between the young person and the parents, but there are also community agencies available, what we call social service agencies. So whether family service centers, etc. Yeah, but I think that this young person can have a discussion with her therapist, whether the psychiatrist or psychologist, because if she's seeing the psychologist, there must be some agreed goals that they are working on.
No, this is a very...
Does this make you worry about when your children become teenagers?
No, I just hope they don't close up as we talked about before. Yep. But I think my husband and myself anyway, I think we're very open in the sense that we'd rather address the condition. And even coming back to the previous Reddit thread about sending to IMH, I mean, I don't think it's a stigma in this day and age, and I don't think it should be, because you're never going to get the help you need if you're going to have that sort of wall against you. So in that sense, I think I just want to make sure that as a parent, I'm there for my kids. If they do have an issue, that they can approach me, talk to me about it, or I can at least step in before something more detrimental happens. Yeah. I think that's my biggest thing. I just want to make sure I'm there for them and I'm available for them. Yeah.
So indeed, I think that if you start having frequent communication with your children, then they are more likely also to continue this as they grow older. The other thing, of course, is also that sometimes we also have to realize that we may have to adjust our parenting strategies along the way, because your teenager is no longer the 6-year-old or 7-year-old who needs protection and needs to be told what to do. So giving them a little bit more kind of like say and guiding them more, rather than controlling them as they grow older.
So in a way, we want our children to be able to talk to us about such issues rather than ask about it on Reddit. That would be the goal. So we have now come to the end of this episode. Thanks, Dr. Lim and Jayshree, for joining us and sharing your own personal experiences. Jayshree and Dr. Lim, is there anything you want the audience to take away from this episode?
Jayshree, do you have it?
Sure, yeah. So I think the one thing that I would take away is, as parents, we do have that responsibility towards our kids to ensure that we look out for their mental health well-being as well. And we want to step in or help them before it's too late. So the one thing that I've started doing with my kids nowadays is every day I try to ask them, I have one-on-one time with my kids, and I'll say, hey, tell me something in your day that went well. Something in your day that could have been better. And, what do you want to achieve tomorrow? What's your goal for tomorrow? And I think they've started opening out and telling me things more. Of course, sometimes it's still hard to dig things out of them, and you ask them something, what happened? No, nothing, mommy. And, I kind of have, I don't know if it's a mom's instinct as well. You just keep asking them and, keep bugging them about it. But sometimes you just got to drop it. And as parents, I think you just, as you said, you got to evolve, your parenting strategies and take the cues from them as well. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think that the family is the most important support base for the young child. So not to forget that parents are important too. So the parents need to take care of themselves. Remember that they are partners along this journey of guiding their children. And then they also have good partners in the school. So today's schools not only can provide observations, suggestions for parents, but also mental health assessments and intervention.